Electric cars, you may love them, you may hate them, you may not care at all, but we have 5 steps that'll make even the most hardcore combustion fan learn to love electric cars once and for all. That's today on After Drive. So today on After Drive, we're talking about electric cars and learning to love electric cars, or at least kind of like them. And we're at Classic Car Club Manhattan. Zach Moseley, Mike Prichinello, again, back in the, we're at the club and at the bar.
Yeah.
At the club.
Always happy to have you here.
So the first step to learning to love electric cars for motorsports enthusiasts is to embrace motorsports that electric cars are good at. Forget about going around a circuit for hours on end. For electric cars, it's all about short-term speed. Events like drag racing, hill climbs, Pikes Peak comes to mind. They have an advantage at high altitude. And time attack or Nürburgring time trials, that's another place where electric cars will probably excel. I mean, obviously, there's Formula E.
Right.
And if you don't laugh at them for jumping from car to car instead of refueling.
I think that's awesome. I mean, I'm really excited to see this because, again, in our experience of driving these cars on the road, it does encourage a different kind of driving just based on the way you have the torque delivery. And it kind of, for lack of a better term, encourages you to drive like an asshole because you can be like, all right, I see a little gap over there. I'm going to go for it. Whoop. And you just shoot right in because you have the instant torque delivery. And I'd like to think that in Formula E that might get us some more passing than we see in Formula One because they'll have more opportunity to take chances. It's not like they're at the limit of their rev range almost and they can squeak out another little bit. It's like they're going to be going along, and if they have the guts, they can punch it.
But for right now, other than Formula E, where it is a circuit race, so you have to switch cars or you have to figure out a way to change batteries. Things like time trials, obviously we've seen it in Pikes Peak cars. There are 3 really cool Pikes Peak electric cars right now, or that were last past year. And eventually those cars are probably going to be among the fastest. They already have an advantage at the altitude over naturally aspirated cars. I mean, turbos obviously work much better up there in that high altitude.
Right, compress
that air. But electric cars don't have any of that stuff to deal with.
Yeah, I think electric cars in motorsport are really important because if you watch traditional race series right now, between economies and trying to keep racing affordable like it is in Formula One right now, everything is so regulated and restricted that teams are working within just the very small parameters where they could find an edge. It's everything is very regulated, but with electric cars, there's so many different ways to approach it. And there isn't a standard yet. There's a lot of great ideas, and you're watching very different formats and formulas race against each other. And so from the engineering point of view, I think it's a lot more interesting. Same as motorcycle racing. They do the electric Isle of Man TT now.
Oh, yeah.
And the truth is a lot of those bikes didn't finish. They just couldn't do the distance of the race. But some of them did. But you would watch, these bikes that were made by Honda, for instance, Honda's Mugen Racing program, and they showed up with millions and millions of dollars of research. And then some guys in a shed in Leicestershire show up as well with their little Agni motor or whatever, and did better. So it's just different ways to approach it, the same as cars right now. And I think that's what makes it really interesting. I think motorsport fans should try to look beyond just the noise of a combustion engine, which is thoroughly awesome.
Well, yeah. Well,
we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. The sound stuff. Yeah. But another thing. So Chris Harris drove the Drayson electric race car,
originally the Lola,
the prototype, the Lola. So the interesting thing about that is that they set that car up for time attack. Now imagine electric time attack could be a cool way to do that electric car thing because it's a short distance and it's all about speed and corner exit is all about torque.
I mean, I think you're right that with where it is currently focused on those kind of things, but getting back to my lane changing thing, I can't wait to see head-to-head racing in it because I think there'll be a lot of action. And
it can't be that far off.
Yeah, and back to Mike's point, I mean, I think it really is that we're at like the sort of pioneering edge of it where you can actually see some innovation in teams.
That's a strong point too. Is that when cars, at least when motorsports were new, it was all about what guys were doing in their sheds or in their garages.
The first race car was 3 horsepower.
Yeah. Right.
in Paris, right? It was 1886 or something was the first motorsport race. It was 3 horsepower. They didn't go very fast. I think it was like don't quote me, but it was something like a 40-kilometer race, and it took them hours.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. It was interesting to watch cars go at that time speed, and as you say, trying to figure out how people do it.
Yeah. I mean, it was exciting to see, engineers and just guys in their shed getting the cars faster and faster and
Figuring
faster.
it out.
Up to like, next thing you know, it's Can-Am cars, and Porsche's doing 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, now we're at a sort of tipping point. But that whole period was really fertile. So it would be great to see another period like that happen. So another motorsport that's kind of electric car friendly, drag racing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I mean, even CBS News just did a piece on electric drag racing. I mean, they've been doing it for a really long time especially the Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
But it's perfect for electric cars.
Yeah.
You know what I like about it? My father-in-law and brother-in-law are drag racers, and I go quite often to watch them, and I've done it once. It's great fun. And I don't mean to come off like a sissy, but it's hard to get close to the action when you're watching top fuel dragsters, because the noise from those engines and from those exhaust pipes is so loud that like your organs start to rattle, and
it's true.
It's painful. So like everybody in the stands is sitting there with these big headphones on. It's kind of goofy, kind of amazing.
Yeah.
You actually feel the cars, but when I was watching that footage of that. The car did what? It was 157 miles an hour, I think. The
electric car.
You watch him do the burnout, and then he just was gone. And it was
8 seconds.
It was incredible. And you know what I loved about it? At the end, you heard the silence from the crowd. Then you heard everybody go, "Holy cow!"
Right.
But it just seemed like you could get so much closer to the action with electric drag cars. Aside from their massive torque and massive power. And I get disappointed when I hear race fans just dismiss electric vehicles completely. I think that it's 2013. I think we're at a really interesting time where we're watching a complete new form of racing happen right in front of us. It's in its infancy, and it's very cool to watch. And I think you just have to recalibrate your brain a little bit when you're watching it, and just know it's different than what you're used to, and it's highly experimental. Some cars aren't going to finish. Some are going to be shockingly fast. And, it's just trying to...
So to speak.
Yeah, so to speak. Shocking.
Okay.
Just got my own joke.
That's right. So step 2 to learning to love electric cars. We all love the sound of a combustion engine, highly tuned, running a little rich even. But what about the sound of electric cars? How can we distinguish the sounds of electric cars? Just like a wine connoisseur can detect pineapple and burnt toast in a glass of Burgundy, you can do the same thing with electric cars, I think.
You're like a sonic sommelier.
Yeah.
Trademark.
Right.
Yeah.
Learn to distinguish subtleties in the high-frequency whine of various electric motors. Say things like, those permanent magnet synchronous motors have upper notes of axial flux and strong hints of continuous torque density. So what do you say to that? I mean, to me, it just sounds like whining. I don't know. Are there ways to...
I'll tell you what, I'm actually all for silent cars, because they're not actually silent, or electric cars. I like that you could hear the diff in the back a little bit. I like that you could hear the rubber on the road. I like that you can hear the aero effects when you get up to speed. It's just a different noise.
Yeah.
I got to do a stint on a prototype electric motorcycle, a very short one, but I'm a motorcycle fan, and we race cars, and when we were doing it, everything is always bah, and that's in the back of your head, and it's awesome, and you're like, yeah, go fast. But there's what I learned on that quick trip on that bike was, I was going as hard as I could on the street, but it was completely peaceful. Like I was able to think about what I was doing a little bit more, and I was able to notice more things happening, because you have so much sensory overload when you're at speed in a race car or on a bike or anything like that, and to be able to remove the most in-your-face aspect of it, and again, love
From
the
the
sound
driver's seat, though.
Yeah. I love the sound of a combustion engine. I like getting on the throttle of our race cars, and it's sort of we don't look at a speedometer or anything. You sort of know where you are in that car at the moment based on your on the whine of the RPM and everything.
Yeah.
But to hear nothing is for me as good in a very different way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say that there are probably things that when you start getting really into electric cars, that you can tell differences between, one motor versus another kind of motor. Yeah. Brushless versus, what the hell do I know, right? Exactly. So
I'm gonna have to totally brush up on my motorsport vernacular now. Right?
Brush up on them.
I'm doing it all over.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the jokes write themselves.
I mean, for me, it just sounds like the future. I mean, like
sounds like the future.
We're gonna date ourselves here, but I remember watching the Jetsons and the cars are flying by going.
Yeah, or an old Citroën, really.
Yeah, seriously, and well, they'll get that burble in there somehow, but it sounds like that to me. And there is, it's not like you hear nothing. Like if you step on the gas, you hear this kind of straining gear noise and the whine. That whine that goes right along with the acceleration, just like a combustion engine does.
We were
just a bit more.
So become a wine connoisseur.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, we were at Le Mans this year, and they ran the hybrid Audi prototype. And every car, and that one came around, and it just made a different, very kind of silent noise, but there was anger.
Yeah, I
on
mean, it looked and
cool.
sounded like a landed spaceship.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I think mostly you're probably hearing the turbo whistle off the diesels. But
You know what I don't want to happen. I'm not too amazed or impressed with the conversation of artificial noises.
Right.
I won't even
agree
get
with you
into
on
like
that.
the BMW thing and all of that, but to make artificial engine noises. I get the warning, the warning beeping or whooshing noise that they're talking about as the cars pull into the pit. That makes sense because each team is doing their own thing and I have to turn it quite sharply, just as a warning. But I don't know why people are assuming, or engineers are assuming that kind of noise is just less interesting to people, I suppose, and already masking it. Let's get the cars up to speed and let's get the engineering figured out, and I think the audio component of it will follow.
Yeah, I agree. And I think once people get into it, I think fans will figure out how to like the sound. They'll figure out what it is.
We'll be able to race at Lime Rock on Sundays.
there you go.
Oh,
Right?
well, that's a really strong point I hadn't thought of. Sound regulations are really cutting into the motorsports schedules at a lot of tracks.
Yeah.
So you get like Laguna Seca can't run a bunch of
This
races.
is vintage tracks that have been there forever.
Vintage
They're
tracks.
beautiful. Everybody wants to be near them, and then they shut them down.
That is a very strong
Lime Rock's
point.
a great American racetrack,
Yeah.
and I think it really suffers because you can't race on Sundays.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
So that's
and,
it.
and the other thing is,
Or, Alan Wilzig's backyard, right? He has to
That's
keep all
true.
of his cars regulated a certain
He
thing.
doesn't.
not to
I don't know if
bother.
he has to, but he does just for his
He's a
neighbor's
good
sake.
guy.
Because he's
Yeah.
a good guy. But
Yeah.
the other thing is it will bring attention to the other noise in cars. I mean, I know for the moment all electric cars seem to have single speed gearboxes, but I remember the first F1 race I went to, and the gearbox technology must be changing because I don't hear it as much anymore. But in 2005, 2006, I remember walking up to the track in Montreal, and you go across this bridge in the woods, and the first thing I heard was them downshifting through the gears. It's like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah,
And you start to put more emphasis on that and the kind of squealing of the brakes.
Brakes,
and the-
tea kettle brakes, right? You don't
Yeah.
hear that on TV too much, but at a live Formula One track, you hear them whistle into corners because of the heat that they're dissipating.
So there's
So there are
there'll be
other
all kinds
sounds.
of-
You develop a range of sound distinctions.
What do you guys think as from a driving point of view? And I haven't driven an electric race car, so I don't know. But will you hear the rubber letting loose a fraction earlier? Will you have quicker reaction to
wonder.
capturing a car from oversteer? Perhaps?
I mean, you know what? The best drivers, the most sensory attuned drivers will definitely come up with stuff like that.
yeah.
Okay, step 3. Embrace your inner e-nerd. Learn things like torque ripple and the differences between brushless DC motors and induction, and things like iron losses. What the hell are all those things? Talk about power in kilowatts. Talk about how electric motor torque vectoring will change the way cars go around corners for the better.
And honestly, I have no idea what any of that stuff is.
Torque ripple? You don't know torque ripple?
Yeah, man. But we will. We will know because it's going to become relevant. Whatever.
Sounds dirty,
whatever it
doesn't
is.
it?
Yeah.
Torque ripple.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of torque ripple. No, sorry, Ian, that sounds dirty.
I'm looking forward to see what new tuners, the next generation of tuners, can do with those parameters in their garages.
Yeah.
Guys are already, a lot of tuning already happens on a laptop, but when your whole drivetrain's electric, I'm sure a lot more can be done.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's funny when you think about back when you started getting into cars and you started learning about engines and what they do, and then you started going through the magazines and seeing what what does the Ferrari 288 GTO have? Oh my God, the turbos. And then you start talking about turbos with your friends, and you start following that kind of car nerd continuum up through the differences between what Porsche motors, Porsche engines, the flat sixes were, and then the Ferrari flat crank, all that. I mean, it's like all of that stuff that we learned about cars back then or in the past 20 years of our lifetimes, and then other people, of course, going all the way back.
Yeah.
That can be learned now about electric cars. I mean, it's sort of weird because we don't actually know any of the things, right?
Yeah.
And,
It's all
I'm
very
not-
cloak and dagger.
And really, and that's sort of why we're talking about this, because we're not electric car nerds yet.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Well,
we could get there at some
You
point.
know where we'll look. I mean, it's all about the youth generation. And having a 3-year-old kid, I have a unique perspective in this because his favorite thing to like find on YouTube is like kids with hopped up Power Wheels, where like, you know, those things are designed for like 2.5 miles an hour, but
Yeah.
you pull out like a diode and do some stuff, and all of a sudden the kid's doing like 20, and you can do burnouts and wheelies in your little like Hummer Hot Wheels.
How could you not like that?
See, that's interesting. There's a gateway drug for you right there.
Yeah, there you go. So you get these kids who are used to tuning
Yeah.
their old plastic cars, and you know,
like
by
hack
the
tuning
by the time they're driving, they're
That's
gonna.
insane. I didn't tune my big wheel. I mean, what do? You
Yeah.
pull the thing or you don't. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like there's nothing to tune.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
really
a
cool.
very cool thing. The Power Wheels generation is already, I mean, the first Power Wheels generation is probably in their 20s now, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But now, you know, like next generation Power Wheels, like tunable Power. Imagine buying a chip for your Power Wheels. Like
Yes.
if the Power
Yes, I
Power
do.
Wheels sold like
Yeah.
super chips for, you know.
Yeah, there's all these hacks. I'm sure they're gonna like melt their batteries, and the things will catch on fire eventually. But
I think electric
but-
racing-
Aftermarket. Imagine SEMA having a special section for just Power Wheels tuning.
Electric cars and electric racing is going to make nerds who are kind of already cool way cooler, right? It's cool to be a nerd now, I'm told.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what they say.
Which is good, right? But
I
seriously,
hope.
it's you're
I
hacking.
mean, look at how cool Zach has
yeah,
become. I mean,
yeah,
it's
like
really
you're
like
hacking instead of tuning.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Thanks, guys.
Gonna have to go to
hacking
class.
instead of tuning.
Yeah.
Well, the hacker tuner, you know, confluence at some point.
Yeah. Is your car going to be hackable? You'd be driving down the road, and then someone hacks into it, and suddenly you're doing 160.
What? I mean, it's funny. It'll all be software, controller, motor, and then all that stuff.
Whatever
All
you
the
figure out in
parameters can
between,
be
yeah.
can be messed with.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so step 4, play the numbers game. It produces how much torque? 4,000 pounds-feet, right? I mean,
Gigawatts.
Gigawatts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about how the Tesla Model S is quicker than a BMW M5. Name drop the 1,000 horsepower Velar E Rimac Concept 1 all-wheel drive electric car. It's Croatian. But I mean, it gives the opportunity for other countries
Yeah.
to become leaders
Yeah,
in
there's-
this new technology.
if
Whether it's us, we can, you know, or the Japanese, or
Well, let's be
or
fair.
it doesn't matter.
Or
Might
even,
not be.
you know, even
Croatians.
even forget leaders, just to build cars. You know, if
Yeah.
they can build a chassis and get their power pack from China, they could have a car.
Right.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know there's a little more to it than that, but there's no longer that we have to have a combustion engine manufacturing facility, and you can just get your motor and
Right.
Sort of at that period in the arc of electric vehicles where those individuals with ingenuity could really shine. 'Cause,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of them are doing it better than major manufacturers are. They're big lumbering companies. They have all these different divisions and accountants and budgets, and they do what they can within their silos. But some guy with passion and a bit of creativity and craftsmanship in his garage could build something better.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he meets crash test and pedestrian safety requirements. But anyway, that whole
yeah.
thing. But look at the
Not
numbers.
in race cars, though.
Not in race cars. That's absolutely true. Look at the numbers, though.
And technology sort of always trickles down from racing to the street anyway. So
There are things that we didn't talk about in terms of what Pikes Peak is doing. Pikes Peak is actually a really interesting proving ground for things like torque vectoring, battery recharge,
what about torque rippling?
torque rippling.
Can you do that at Pikes Peak?
I don't know. The torque probably ripples at Pikes Peak.
Everywhere.
Yeah. And finally, step 5, motorcycles. Mike Prichinello. That's your area.
That's my hot spot.
It's your hot spot.
Yeah, motorcycles, electric motorcycles have come a long way. I think it's because they're lighter. I won't say motorcycles more simple. There's fewer parts, but you're engineering on 2 planes, so there's a
Right.
difficulty there. But you know, a race motorcycle is circa 300 pounds, so you know, you could get a little bit more distance out of them. Obviously, using a smaller battery, but using potentially a smaller motor as well. But there's the electric TT right now.
Yeah.
In Isle of Man, they did the electric motorcycle race up Pikes Peak as well. That was Chip Yates.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chip Yates is a real electric vehicle pioneer, I think, and so he's already proven that he's raced in WERA against pro WERA race and AMA against combustion bikes and has done very well and won many races. He won Pikes Peak, and now he's applying his electric engine technology to airplanes. So the technology that comes out of racing electric vehicles all over the place is winding up in all forms of transportation, but you can get a really cool electric bike now for not very much money at all.
Yeah.
And there's some really good brands out there. One that's coming out that I quite like is called BRD Redshift. And they're making electric supermoto bikes and dirt bikes, probably a sport bike after that. But the guys that do race them, and I mentioned earlier about that sort of peacefulness that comes with an electric engine, they'll tell you that their racing was much more interesting because they're more aware of everything around them. The same sort of thing, you find a bit of serenity in it. When it comes to motorsport, the only thing about electric engines, be it on a motorcycle or a car or whatever, that I think I might miss a little bit is the complexity of shifting.
Oh,
that's a big part of going into a corner at speed is rev matching and downshifting the car, and when you do that, you have that weight transfer from front to back, and it's managing the front and rear as well as the.
You talk about tuning. Where that will come in is
engine braking.
Yeah, you'll have onboard
engine braking
and regenerative ability. So and imagine that becoming a factor that you have to work into racing. You want to brake later. You want to use the engine braking, and charge up your battery, or you want to slip through someone and risk dropping that extra charge and maybe not finishing the race. You could really get some kind of complex dynamics.
You're
super nerdy stuff, but
you're eliminating one very complex part of racing and you're replacing with a totally different sort of fine-tuned dial input rather than an on-off input.
And one that could have benefits or consequences in lots of other things of the race as well.
Yeah. But I'd imagine after all that, it really is downshiftting is what does disturb the car, I think, more than anything else, where the weight goes back to front really quite quickly and you get a lot of that oversteer and spinning off track and things. I think an electric car, as you say, vectoring in that engine braking won't lead to that. It'll just lead to faster lap times and safer laps overall. But it's gonna transform motorsport for sure.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting.
Well, that's it. 5 steps.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm there.
Also, go out.
I'm excited.
6 steps. Go drive a Tesla S. Have you driven one yet?
I have still not driven a Tesla S.
Fantastic. Yeah. Can we talk about that for 30
seconds?
seconds?
Go ahead. Sure.
It's a great car. I think for me, Zach always says it well. For a new American automotive company to make that their first car, because obviously the Roadster was their first car, but it was based on a Lotus.
Yeah.
To build their own chassis and have it be so good.
Yeah.
We compare it to an M3. Very springy, sort of like a new pair of sneakers. But I have to tell you get on the gas in that thing.
The accelerator.
The accelerator, right? You get on the accelerator.
The gas.
It is because there's only one gear, and because the power is linear and savage. I compare it to if you've been on like a super modern roller coaster lately that just goes 0 to whatever it is. I drove that car a couple times. We drove it to Brooklyn to get some pizza, and you put your foot down, and it just does not end. And at one point, you're like, "Holy God! Like I gotta take my foot off the accelerator." Right.
It's or the rheostat. Even.
Really
I don't know if
well
that's
made
your
car.
actual Is that a thing? It's not like AFX cars where like you're.
Maybe.
Ooh.
I don't know. Yeah, a rheostat.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell that is. We'll
know.
forget about it. But that's really cool about the Model S.
It's a great car. It's a great drivable car. And you're when you're driving it, you're not like, this is a great electric car. It's just a great car.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's electric combustion or solar. I don't care.
That's a good point, and that's a good point to end on, is that as long as it's a good car, as long as the racing is exciting, as long as the racing fits the car's capabilities and extends what drivers can do and what technology is doing, it's going to be better for everybody. It's going to be better, it's going to be a thing that will be exciting enough to push it forward, and that's what it needs to do. It needs something to push it forward. And that is After Drive for today. Don't forget, /drive.tv, @drive on Twitter, facebook.com/drivetv. What do you think? Electric cars, will you ever learn to love electric cars? Did we do anything to sway you toward at least considering being an electric car motorsports fan in the future? That's it.
Thanks
See you guys
for doing
later.
all this. Yeah.
Mike and Zach from Classic Car Club Manhattan.
Thanks.
Yep, you got it. We'll see you later.
Cool.
So now we're going to take 10 seconds to talk about Mike Spinelli's next car. He doesn't know it yet. He came in here and said, I almost bought a Mondial, and we said, what, are you crazy? We have the Italian car for you. So this is one of my...
I'll Vanna White it.
Yeah, one of my babies, one of my favorite cars I ever had in the club. But, you know, it's kind of redundant to my M2, so I got to think about selling it. And
It is, by the way, a 1975 Alfa Romeo GTV.
Right, which I know people are on the comments saying, they didn't sell a 75 GTV in the US. You're right, they didn't. This was a 75 GTV 1300 that they sold in Europe only. But someone brought it over here and put the 2-liter motor in. And we have gone through everything. The brakes, the engine's been rebuilt, the transmission, it's got a 411 limited slip diff, you know.
Really?
Yeah, Bilstein shocks and springs. I'm not trying to sell them the car or anything, but it is awesome.
It's gorgeous.
One of the
Drives
best
great.
handling, best braking classic cars you ever had.
Sounds very good too.
Sounds
Custom
good, yeah.
exhaust on it.
2 1/4 inch stainless exhaust.
I like it. It has a lot of Italian character. So like just little things like when you open the door, you have to push the handle forward.
Right.
And
Yeah,
remember,
all the
you're
controls are backwards.
If you're a smoker, you don't like push the thing in and then light your cigarette. You dip your cigarette into it.
Yeah, there's this hole, and you push it in, and when it's ready, it bings like a toaster,
Yeah.
and your cigarette's ready to be lit.
I'll have to start smoking again.
Yeah, totally. And there's just you drive this thing around Manhattan and don't break 35 miles an hour and have the best time ever. You know, it's so much fun to drive.
And look at if you're picking up a woman on a date.
A woman, I don't think.
That's I think that's the car to do it in, right?
Yeah.
This is,
I think it's
by
cool.
the way, this is one of my all-time favorite cars. So Zach having brought this to my attention is very frightening at this point.
Well, the other good thing is that it's for sale. Yeah. And if you don't buy it,
So should I buy it?
One of your fans is
Should
gonna
I
buy it.
Should I buy this car from these two jamokes?
text 666 for yes.
All right.
We will see very shortly.
Next time on After Drive, we'll go through Mike Spinelli's restoration of the GTV.
Oh, we'll leave the police sticker on it too, so you get fewer
Oh, yeah,
tickets.
I gotta have that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we done?
Done.
So it's Croatian, and that brings up an interesting thing. The f***ing thing. I said thing again. Sorry, Ian.
Think about the thing.
What is this thing?
What is this thing?